Okay, thank you, everyone. We're starting time 15 minutes late, which is all right because some people had to fall out. So the end has been changed from the schedule to roll back 15 minutes. So Ismail, as primary host, would you like to say anything beyond welcome?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that real pleasure for me to be with you here today and have an occasion to listen and learn to what you're doing. About 10 years ago, here, convinced me of a lot of wonderful new ideas that he was working on. And lo and behold, he started implementing them, getting some of them to be done. So gradually things took shape, because you know a community was formed. And we have had about 10 years now of the meetings and Monday seminars and applications and so on. And then a little while ago, we decided that he needed some help, and I'm happy that Neil came on board. And with that, now moving into new vistas. And I'm here to listen and learn all the wonderful things you're doing, and I'm delighted that we could all get together here. I was hoping that we would do it in Egypt. Yeah. President delayed the opening of the new museum and all of that stuff. And as a result, it couldn't be done this year, but maybe next year it might be in Egypt. For this year, we are in the Royal Society, the second oldest, but arguably the greatest European institution of science.
Just how you said European. How you said European to the library.
Because of the institution of the law. The ancient library of Alexandria. In fact, if you go to the US National Academy of Science, the main hall, have four archways. Each archway is a medallion of one of the first institutions of knowledge. Number one is the ancient library of Alexandria, 2,300 years. Then the Society dei Lincei in Italy, 1603, was a society that had Helio and such other eminent people. Royal Society in 1660, and then the French Society 1667. And when I used to be walking around there, and that was the president at the time, keep telling me, you have to live up to, because I left my jobs in Washington, vice president of the bank, World Bank, to go back to Egypt and relaunch the ancient library of Alexandria, pretty much in the same spot. The beautiful building, and people who come and visit. So we were hoping that we'll do something. The also new institution we just launched, which is the Egyptian Museum. It's in Cairo. Take you on a side trip to Alexandria to see the library. That will be next year.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ismail.
Wonderful location. Bring us here. Give us this. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. I want to just say 2 years ago, Frode and I had turned in a grant to the Sloan Foundation, and it was accepted very quickly. The fastest I'd ever seen a turnaround in my life. Been writing grants for 30 years. Within a week, I think it was 2 weeks, we had an okay to move forward. So 2 years ago, we started. We thought we'd start in January, but they gave us the okay to start immediately. So about this time last year, we kicked off this project. We end our funding at the end of this year, and then we have one more year without funding. So hopefully we'll get. But we've been enjoying this work. Frode and I have been working together now for 2 years on this project, and we have a lot to talk about. I want to thank all of you for being here today. There's a lot of folks that support on the Monday meetings and previous conferences. I'm new to all of this, only 2 years. Many of you have been with him for 10. Thank you.
Plan Uber and guests. I won't take any responsibility. So grateful that you are here. Oh, that was funny there. Today is about fun more than anything else. The information's on the website if you want to review this. Fun dialogue, enjoy it. We're going to be very hardcore on timing. So Anne back there, hi Anne, in the very subtle colored shirts. If you're a speaker, she will give you a bit of a countdown. On the 10-minute mark, you will be physically removed from the podium.
I'll start doing interpretive dance after 10 minutes. 30 minutes long, enjoy.
I can't take your microphone this time, so that is just to make it a bit less stressy. Then there's 5-minute dialogue, and that's it. And options are all the way downstairs. We have some water, we have 2 breaks. And if you don't have the, this is where the running order and so on is. Now we're actually a bit ahead of schedule. Any questions before we start on how we do this?
You're going to call the next, you let us know who the next person is before we start, so we.
Absolutely. So one of the things, thank you, Mark, that's really useful. One of the things we tend to do during the 5-minute Q&A, the next person gets ready. Whether it's plugging in a laptop, that's going to be.
You have a running order so people know the order of speakers.
Yeah. It's hang on, let's have a look at that since we have the time. Let's go to my here website. So in a few minutes, we're going to go on with the introduction to the project that Fabien and Dene and I have been working on. Dene will follow that with, you can all read the presentation. And then we have a break at 10:30, which will be some coffee and cakes at the back. Lunch at 12:15. Right. Coming on online, he's the only online presenter this time. He wanted to be here, but it wasn't. We finish promptly at 5. I think Dene and Fabien, why don't we start? That was not a rhetorical question, Fabien.
Start.
So, Fabien hasn't been introduced yet. He makes reality of what we do. Very often not in the way we expect. Because Fabien is a prototypist, so he thinks actively about ideas. He's not brick by brick building, even though Lego we use as an analogy often. So Dene's talked a bit about the beginning. So hang on, this slide is acting up a bit. So this was Emily, my wife, filming me, all just a mock-up, late 2023, before we started the project. That's kind of how we envisioned it. And then she filmed me 2 days ago. This is the reality. Have the headset, put it on, a little bit more cumbersome than the kind of dream version. And here we have some very hard to see nodes floating in space, but it works, and you can see the limitations of it. This is late last night, where we can now, this is in the living room, Fabien standing here. Because it's really dark, you probably cannot see the lines. Lines are there now. So this is developed using Apple's native stuff on the Vision Pro. And it wasn't that hard for my guys to do it. Okay, they are very, very good. They've been working very, very hard. This is not a monumental effort like a whole new piece of software, which is really important because part of what we're doing is encouraging you guys to build also. If you want to read something in the headsets, especially some of the newer expensive ones, it's totally fine. Super sharp, super nice. If you just want to read plain text, that is done. If you want to write sitting on a beach, you can do that. View of the presentation.
Share.
Yeah, I think you need to share screen.
Bottom.
The bottom, scroll to the bottom of the screen and click the green button.
I've actually done that.
Unshared.
And reshare.
Hi, Randall.
There you go.
Yeah, no, that's what I did. Share desktop one.
Sharing it.
Share sound.
I'm sure sound engineer.
Oh, that's already happening. Yeah. Can you guys see the? Randall, can you see the presentation, the slides?
We're seeing it.
Oh, yeah, okay, fine. So if the previous one wasn't visible, that's fine. Anyway, when it comes to just plain text and XR, it's there, it's fine, it looks beautiful. If you want to sit and okay, there's just a bit of a delay, that's what's happening. If you want to sit on
Looking
a-
fine here right now.
Okay, thank you. If you want to sit on a beach or on a mountaintop, you can do that. If you want to resize your windows, you can do that. These are simple, basic things. These are solved. That is not what we've been working with the Sloan Foundation. That's much more exciting. And Dene will give an overview.
Yeah, so the question we were trying to answer in research is what is the future of text and how do you write and create in a virtual environment, in an XR environment? And so we had a 2-year scope in which we were developing reading first for year 1 and authoring in year 2. We were trying to separate these two activities because it's the general idea is that the whole notion of a novel separated reading and writing from each other. And what we were trying to do is put it back together in a VR environment. And so as we were working on this year 1 project, we realized that we really needed to bring those two activities together in the VR experience. So by the time we got to authoring, reading became part of it. It made perfect sense. So the separation was minimal. In year 1, though, we worked on, did some really interesting things. At this time that we started this project, the Apple Vision Pro, which was part of our project, had not yet been released. So we started a project without the very object that we were going to be creating with. At the same time, the Quest 3 had just been on the market for 1 year, and WebXR had not yet solved the interoperability problem with the Apple products. So we were really starting to pioneer a lot of things that were happening simultaneously. But it gave us some really great chances to pioneer. And that is in year 1, because of the problems with the Quest 3 and Apple Vision Pro having different activities, different kinds of interactive movements with the hands and gesturing, we came up with a monomenu. So using one hand and being able to touch your fingers to create experiences inside the space. So that was our first kind of aha moment. We also had a problem with being able to use the keyboard in the virtual space because keyboards weren't talking well to the WebXR. So we created in year 2 a virtual keyboard. So inside the space, a virtual keyboard comes up. You're able to experience and actually create inside the space and be able to export your virtual text into the physical world. That was quite amazing. And then in year 2, we also created the circles where we could and be able to change the text in situ without having to do any programming. So anybody without any experience with WebXR can actually change the color of their text, boldface, and those kinds of things. So some really great opportunities came out of these past 2 years. And we're looking now at year 3 and thinking about how to connect objects with the text. So how do multimedia objects work with text? And other kinds of experiments. So that's where we are, and now I'm going to turn this back over to Frode and the slideshow.
Now, Anne is doing the timing back there, but I'm going to have my extra timer here just for reference. Right. So following on for that, we last year, I have one slide of what we did last year. It's very, where is Ken? That Ken, yes, very Tron-like. In that it's lines in space, very minimalist, very Tron-like. If you don't know Ken and Tron, Wikipedia, please. So here we had the beginnings of a hand menu, different styles of doing that. You could take text and move it about in a sphere. We decided to limit our interaction to a 360 sphere. We've since a different perspective. So now, 2025, Fabien, please stand here. So these are many of Fabien's prototypes. I got to edit which order they go in. This one is super simple, not a lot of code according to Fabien.
10 lines.
10 lines. But the thing is, it really illustrates that on here, okay, whatever. When you have it in the headset, it's, oh, okay. Right? It is so spatial. It helps us get to literally grips with getting to grips with knowledge in XR. I'll play the video once more because all it does is pinch and you see the color in terms of a web color. So it has some functionality, but that's not really the point. And then for some reason, he managed to load the entire Wikipedia into XR. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and I will get down just a bit. So, Wikipedia isn't as big as the Library of Alexandria, but it's still like how a lot of us think of as knowledge. And we think of it as something that is away in the cloud, something that is intangible and graspable, but it's in there. It's offline, it fits in the headset, it's something that can, okay, this is not extremely pretty, again, prototyping part, but it fits in. And the point of this is to, you don't need like some very large infrastructure when you hear discussion like this, you think it's for others. It's not, I don't have the literal power to handle this. And this kind of demonstration is say, you have it and you have it like right there. If you're traveling, if you're anywhere you want to join, you can play with this. So this is a kind of hope for this kind of small prototype to show that you can do it.
And in terms of you can do it, writing code and so on, a lot of you can, a lot of us cannot. So this is Fabien building a little window where you can edit variables without having to deal with the whole package. Say, virtual hands, the hand menu, the mono menu that Dene talked about. This is a room where you go in, you have all your knuckles on your fingers, you can put commands onto them. So when you then tap on them in the future, they are customized to what you want. Obviously here it's hanging off because you're still building it. And this is a WebDAV real directory on your real computer in real life, virtually. The blue ones are subdirectories, folders, and they open to the side. Not fully 3D in the sense that, of course, the objects are, but the knowledge is on a wall as a really cool beginning space, and you're inside cubes as you move along. This is one of those, what's the point? It's so messy. Also, when you see it on the headsets, it's not messy. All right, that's why we encourage you to try. We have some headsets here. It also imports Bob Stein's tapestry, which is just unbelievable. What Dene talked about with the ring menu, we're looking at ways you can do a gesture like this, and this means something, pulling through like they are like learning rings. Organizing by spatial, here they're in a cube that happens to be visual, doesn't have to be. You can say these are different things spatially. The keyboard, Dene presented it perfectly. All I'd like to add is if you happen to be at work with a physical desk, this can be aligned with your desk. When you type, your fingers can hit something. Super cool.
And it's properly in volume in space, because typically what you have are flat keyboards on the surface, which is not necessarily how you want to interact with it, ergonomically speaking.
And this is pulling out annotations, and you can see they know where they come from. And so much clearer than what you saw in the dream earlier. This is the final kind of bit. Here you toggle the background, tap on the wrist, so you can work in a fake room if you want. Or artificial, you know, as in you have the artifice on the walls, you put things on the wall or not. Really important to change that because the substrate, text and XR is everything, not the flat thing. And also notice when the hand moves, when he lets go, the text faces you completely head on. But then when you move, it doesn't follow you. So you have a real, because when you hold something, you know, our hands jiggle, all these things in XR, we didn't think about before we entered. Right, text would go all over. How do you solve that? I see Ken smiling because that's probably he's been dealing with a lot with interesting things. And we are still us in XR. I know we're over time trying to rush. Using our hands in different ways is powerful. Different information does really require different kinds of interactions. So that's why we have to do many different things. Seating, standing, walk around is very different. Key thing is we mustn't be stuck with one paradigm, Meta or Google or Apple. We need to build very different ways to argue around this. We want people to have freedom of thought, but having freedom of interaction. And probably heard this one before. So thank you. That was
Yeah, please, questions, comments, opposing viewpoints?
While you're thinking, I can illustrate a bit more on this. There was a new headset announced, like the Galaxy XR. And I don't think you have one. I don't think you have one. I for sure don't have one. I didn't change any line of code for it. I asked somebody at Google who had one early. They tried it on and it worked. So that's also like the power of WebXR. Okay, it's a little bit janky, I have to confess, but it does work. And that's kind of the beauty of this. It's not like stuck to one handset with one vendor. It's pretty much vendor platform independent.
I have a question about that. With all the headsets out there, do you anticipate future in which a couple companies sort of gain hold of it, sort of like how with phones now, we have iPhone and Samsung and there's not a
That's why
lot.
we're doing WebEx, the web equivalent. Randall, who is here, will talk at length about how we hope to get after. You need that, just local apps. I showed you initially a local app that we made. This is not that great. WebXR has such promise. Somebody.
Right.
Fantastic. I love the approach of small experiment.
First time you speak, if you can please just say your name, because.
Okay, Alessio Antonini. Fantastic. I love this approach with the small experiment. I was wondering if you are building a library that you tested so we can explore it and check it. And second point is, are you considering moving it to a regular computer using hands tracking, other stuff? Are you considering how the two things will blend?
Second one, we agree strongly. We're not going to do on computer XR. Is that what you mean? We're not. Yeah. We're interested in the headset at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works without the headset, but it sucks. Flat. So technically speaking, it's not a problem. Like you can drag and drop off interoperability between the two. But it's really, it's like talking about a pizza versus eating the pizza. It's not the same thing.
However,
the gesture.
No, but it's a really great and important question, because what he's done is also allowed you to order pizza. To take your analogy further, you can be in the same environment in the headsets. Let's say I'm doing all of this stuff, and then you guys are in the audience in the headset. That can now be done, right? That's what we're working on. But if someone is not in the headset, they're on a computer, it's easier to send files. And so we are working on all, but the primary interaction is absolutely in the headset. What was your first question?
Library of gestures. If you're building, because I love these small experiments about the different interactions. If you're building a repository, we can look at them like a small.
Goes to the underlying thing that you obviously know: metadata, right? If we don't have the data, we don't have anything. And librarians may have comments on this, right? So this is really to build the future. We need to make sure that is possible. Which one do you want?
This one. I want to pause it.
You want too much. Okay. No, I can.
David.
And one quick point then also for the hand tracking on the desktop. So again, technically speaking, it does work, but then you're looking at a projected surface, and then having this sense of depth, it's really hard. It's again technically works, but it's so frustrating that even though visible, it's. And for the library of gestures, we don't have one listed, let's say, but here.
Did you say library of gestures? Yes. I didn't hear gestures. Really interesting word.
Because you're making all these small experiments. It would be nice to catalog them and as a
in terms of gloves, exactly, changing gloves. Yes.
So those are the functions that you bind on the joints. So it's not a gesture proper, it's just on the joint to touch, but it's like the first step toward.
I'm talking more about pulling through all these small experiments here. It's
one other, let's say, would you consider a gesture that if you drop the object on your head, then it's a gesture, regardless of what the object is, because then it opens something else? Yeah. So we have this, and it's all something we didn't, I think, clarify. It's all open source, which so you can see me naked in the fact that you can see how ugly everything is, which is kind of works, but I'm proud of what's been done. To be clear, the way it's been written, it's very rough. Let's say it's very, but it's there. So it also means if you have a suggestion like this, which we didn't necessarily have the time to do, request issues, all this.
We're done. And thank you. Introducing Dene.
Hi.
Not going until that's finished though.
Okay, there it is. Okay. So I'm Dene Grigar. I know most of you, some of you I met last night. What you're looking at here is the next. Next is a museum and library that my lab has built and continue to maintain. We hold born digital objects, games, literature, and art. We have currently about 6,000 works. We have all the files for these works, as well as a room full of physical archives, so digital and physical archives. Is it buffering? Is that what's happening? Slow internet. So we have in this space, it's a virtual space, you can see we have different collection areas and we do exhibitions. This is the Jean-Pierre Bop exhibition that opened in Paris a couple of months ago. And this is the welcome space of the next. We go into the exhibition into the visualization space. Just a second, as soon as this video moves along. Okay, there it is. So the Viz space, as we call it, contains physical archives that we have turned into 3D models. We want people to be able to see these objects from homes instead of having to fly to Vancouver, Washington to actually see them. And so you're looking at Shelley Jackson's Patrick Girl, the folio for 1995. I have a lot of these works in my personal library, about 500 of them, but the next also holds about 100 boxes of these physical archives. And so what people can do from their home is interact with these objects on a 3D, on this kind of browser-based experience, right? And we have quite a few that we've done as 3D models. As we were working on this project, with the Sloan Foundation, it occurred to me that we could very easily put these into virtual space. And that's what this project has done. So we're buffering. We're going to see in a second that you can don a headset and interact with these objects in a virtual environment. And so for the past year, we've been building out this space so that people can do that. We built this, the whole Next is built in semantic markup, open web languages. Everything is meant to be open to the public. Everything sits on GitHub. You can make anything you want from the space. And as we're building this space, using WebXR made a lot of sense, right? We're not using any engines. We're building this in so that it's actually able to be used simply. So now we're getting ready to see. This is what it looks like. And we're going to be looking specifically at this beach ball first. This is a beach ball that Colton used in his performances for Gursky at Findhorn on acid. This was a hypertext novel published in 2001. And he would perform at these large events and throw beach balls to the public. They would pick up the beach ball, read what was on it, and then he'd perform that piece of the work from the hypertext novel. There are 354 screens of that novel and 2001 links. And so performing that was quite fun because people would read what was on the side, and then he'd find that into the hypertext novel and then perform that. I have both beach balls that he used, right? And so my 3D modeler created that for the Next. And in a second, it'll buffer to the WebXR. You can see all the other objects that we have. We have currently 24 objects available, and every day we're putting on more and more on the space. There we go. You can see that you can get experience in VR, which we'll do in a second. Ready?
Check if we're on the right Wi-Fi.
I'll get your green.
Yeah.
Just a leave.
Made this, it was 9 minutes long. It might be 12 minutes by the time it's
It gives us time to process.
Hello.
One of the things we're trying to do with these models is we want them to look exactly like the objects. So if the object had a scuff mark on it, then we created that on the object itself. We also included sound. Here we go. Now you're in the VR space. And so we began to add, you can see here the ball, and then here's Richard holding this beach ball. Here's some of the objects. Here he is here performing with it, 2001. Our lab in 2021 recreated that entire novel as a web-based hypertext. We moved it out of story space into the web, so it's open web environment, which means now it can be brought into the space itself, into the VR space, and interacted with. as well as these objects. You can see this little pig walking around the space, and in the space it's walking around you. This is one of the characters in the novel, right? We can see that we have up here the flying pig, about the flying pig. All of these are objects from the collection that he donated to the next. Here we are interacting with the object. You can see the way in which even the smudge marks. When you touch the beach ball, the sound is the beach ball squeaky sound of plastic. When you throw the beach ball, it bounces. You can hear the thump. Trying to recreate all of those kind of experiences so that when you're in that environment, you're immersed inside of it. There we go. So you throw it. I have the sound turned on so you'd be able to hear that. Now, what's interesting about this is that if we can bring in the web-based work, so you're reading the work along with the objects, this helps to extend the knowledge of the story. Most of you have never heard of Richard Holton. You've never heard of Figursky at Fenhorn on Acid. You probably have never experienced a hypertext work in your life. But if you were to experience this work with the artifacts, it helps to extend that knowledge. One thing that I noticed when I was doing research at the Rubenstein Rare Book and Manuscript Library is with the physical archives of Judy Malloy's Uncle Roger, they have the floppy disk in a vault. They have the box that she made by hand in a special box. All of the work itself, all her notes are in another box. Everything is separated. And what I'm trying to do in this space is bring everything together so that the physical archives, the digital archives, and the work themselves are all together in one space so that reading and writing can happen simultaneously. This will be moving. We're going to look at a few more objects. You can see here, I'm not showing up. You can see here, this is one of the vinyl packaging for a work. And you can see that this vinyl caused the sweating to happen. So the ink is now on this here. And this is a really interesting idea Mark Bernstein had when he was packaging to make some kind of, I think, permanent packaging, but it caused problems with the work itself. And so capturing that for a scholar, they could see the problem with the packaging over time. A couple of years later, he released this as a cardboard packaging. Then later it came out as CD-ROM. This is Afternoon of Story, the 1992 version. Scholars can also read the text on here. You can see that it was almost presented like a book. You have the testimonials. You have the bibliographical information on the folio. So making that available to scholars so that they can study this. Most people don't have access to this kind of material, and they have to fly to the Rubenstein Library, or they have to go to the library in Texas at Austin, or my lab to see this kind of material. So making this available is very helpful. We'll look at one more thing. Stop. Last thing we're going to look at is the pinwheel that Dina Larson made. Dina Larson is known for her work Marble Springs, another hypertext novel that came out in 1992. She was trying to teach people back in the 90s what interactive poetry was. So she made a little pinwheel. It'll come up in just a second. And on the pinwheel blade, she wrote lines of poetry so that you could hold the pinwheel in your hand and blow the pinwheel, and the poetry would move around like, with the blades. I guess it's not going to come up. Probably passed over it. But anyway, so we have that reconstructed in this space as well. So we have a lot of really interesting archives, and that's the project. Yeah.
Hey, what else do you have?
All right, what'd you say?
I'm going to just
Okay.
What other text ephemera are you gonna be ready into this?
So many, we're gonna do all 48 story space windows, and we're on number, I think, 15 right now. We're doing all of that. We're doing, gosh, we have announcement cards, and we have the cup that you gave us from the lounge, all kinds of interesting things. Also swag, the conference swag. So hypertext bags, remember all of those? We're recreating those. We have also the performance outfit for Rob Whittig's Invisible Seattle from the 80s. And you can actually, when you put the helmet on your head, you can actually see the bill of the helmet. Here. Bob?
Excuse me. That was fantastic. Can you say something about the authoring environment?
Yes, and so the next step is next year, what we're doing is we're bringing in the work itself, so we can have that next to the artifacts. And I would love to be able to then bring in the virtual keyboard so people can read, experience, and take notes.
No, I'm asking, how did you make that work?
Oh, how do we do this work?
Yes.
In terms of
What was the authoring environment? I mean, is this something that Fabien made for you by hand?
No,
You have a
actually, year one, we had Andrew Thompson from my lab. This is all from my lab. So Andrew Thompson from my lab did all of this programming. And then Andrew Truax is my 3D modeler, and my designer is Holly Slocum. It was all from my lab.
in other words, it's bespoke. Somebody sat there.
By hand, every bit of it.
So have you talked to like the Long Now Foundation or something about preserving this? Because I can see this as a digital Pompeii.
Which the museum or the
Objects, as you grow them, what's the long-term plan looking at this 100 years from now?
well, this environment is part of the Electronic Literature Organization. So the long-term plan, the organization's been around now for almost 30 years. And so the idea is that it'll continue with the organization. My university's supporting it as well. And so I have access to archival help. I have I've just been given a large space for all my equipment. I have like 100 Macintoshes and PCs to use because I actually have all of the floppy disks and CD-ROMs. So to be able to recreate the works, I have to have access to the legacy computers. So I can sit in my lab, put the floppy disk in, look at the work, and then recreate it, and then be able to put that into the VR space. So there is a long-term plan. There's legacy. Lots of work has gone into this. And I have like 9 people working for me in this space.
Another option would be the Internet Archive. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is all available. This is all open, right? I think we have one more question.
Also, we have one online, just see if it works, but Tess, please go.
Oh, I'm curious, this is this sort of blending art with technologies, but all of these people have been active for 30 years. Some of them, it's not just online, some of them are performing in person. So where was the community? How did people find out that this person was coming to their town performing, or where did people learn? Was this all online? Like where did this?
Oh, I mean, a lot of this came from academics, right? Okay. So universities would have events. A lot of these were museums and libraries and galleries. I mean, the British Library has done events, a beautiful exhibition, and the New Media Writing Prize. There's things that happen all around. UCLA was one of our early sponsors. My university has put on events, conferences. So there's a long-standing community. We can go back to the 80s and look at what was, lots of activities over time. I've been involved in this since 1990 myself. Question online?
Yeah.
Time for one last question. Brandon? Hi.
As you described the beach ball, it seems that the artwork is actually something more between the use of the beach ball in a context, a situation, and that the sort of the tension between sort of archival requirements of keeping something stored and keeping something safe, versus putting the archive, the artifact back in its sort of original circumstances or desired circumstances, is something that you could push back on. Have you looked at being able to kind of revitalize not just the object, but the context that the object wants to be in with things like WebXR before?
thought I was doing that with having the objects surrounded by the context images, having Richard hold the ball in his hand, so you could get a sense of what that ball was meant to be. Showing him sitting as an older man, holding the ball in his hand as a kind of looking backwards at the space. So I think contextualizing it with all the other data that I have at my, on hand helps to do that, I think. But what I'm trying to do, Brandel, is not have a beach ball sitting by itself and nobody knows what that's about. And that's what's happened, right? We have all these objects. You look at them and you say, what is this? Right? But if you see this in context to all the other things it goes with, it makes sense. So recreating that archive, so the archive has its own home, and its home is situated with the work itself. These things didn't happen without the work. The work drives it all. And so by recreating the work, so the work is available, and then pulling the archival material with it, recreates a larger notion of what it means to, save things, to preserve. Does that make sense, Brandel? There?
They're just visually muted.
Yeah, okay. I think, one more question.
One other question, in terms of accessibility and making it personal to the user, could you situate it within, say, like a memory palace, using a method of loci where that then has context?
Well, I'm a college professor, and I'm teaching students all the time history of this technology, right? They have no context for this at all. They have no idea what these things are. And I introduce Figursky to them. They have no idea what hypertext is, and I have to teach them what hypertext is. So my big vision is that if I have a contextual element where I have an environment where all these things are existing together, then they can begin to understand how the pieces work. And they have a better understanding of the time period, the artist, the genre, the experience that people had, and how it came, how Animal Farm occurred. I mean, you don't have things today without the things in the past. But giving that lineage time, I think, helps. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of pedagogy, but also through historical. I think I'm out of time now. Thank you.
Okay. That's good. No, Marcus next. So that's just
So, Mark Anderson, I've been doing stuff for the Future of Text since about 2017. This is my current academic drag because I'm essentially an independent researcher now. And it's probably pertinent to this to say my background, well, signals, and then I was basically an information emergency plumber for many decades. So basically, my life has been trawling through other people's sock drawers, trying to make order from chaos, which is quite unusual because the thing about working on other people's stuff is you don't get to cheat and say it's finished. So one of the things that
Oh, please note, those who are presenting, there is a bit of a lag from the laptop to the screen.
Okay. So one of the things that sort of we've had some rather circular and perhaps full and frank discussions about in the group this year, talk about writing, was things knowing what they are and the representation. And it bothered me that we were having these sort of quite strong discussions whilst essentially all agreeing. And one of the things, and this is really a very hot take, so it's a bit rough this because it's literally in the last couple of weeks a bit place, but one of the tensions I realized was some people were thinking this from the sort of the exposition, as opposed to, I suppose, because I spent a lot of time doing hypertext and noting tools and spatial hypertext. When I see a 3D space, I think of the sort of the construct in the matrix, the holodeck. So you put in whatever you need it to be, and it allows you to explore what things might be. So, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it calls itself a giraffe. Which do we take? So it's all very well that a thing may say what it is, But when you're exploring, you actually want malleability and you want ambiguity because it needs to look like the thing you're trying to understand, the relationship. Whereas if I'm basically, say, essentially documenting something, I absolutely don't want any ambiguity for the reader, and I want things to present what they are. And that's something that I think we perhaps have tripped over without realizing. So essentially, that's the difference of what's going on. But if I put in those terms, and to contextualize a bit more, if we stick it in the Johari window, so the exploration is really doing the unknown unknowns, and the writing is doing the known knowns. So now, obviously, it's not attached as that. I'm making a deliberate sort of generalizing to make the point. But I think where that gets to is that one of the reasons, so there's been this disconnect, is your starting perspective, your internal perspective, that even when you describe it, you don't necessarily, unintentionally, it's not, people aren't seeing what you're actually seeing in here. And it's definitely not a zero-sum problem. These are not opposites. There is no quality of one being better than the other. But both these things potentially are happening when you're working with text in the space. Though it has to be said with the elicitation, often you're working with actually an abstract of the text. And I'll come on to this in a moment. One of the points being that, so here, a good place to start is in the sense of the user interface, what things look like. Here, you actually really want to be thinking about the information because what you're using the visual for is your tellback. Here, you don't want the tellback to change. Here, you want the tellback to change all the time. So the other thing that is linked to this is, I'm not sure if that's even a term, but I don't know a better way to put it. But essentially, it is definitely the case that for some people, you know, that if the text isn't there, the text isn't there. So what you see is what the text is. But there are two problems with a lot of text, is that once you get a lot of it, it can become noise, especially if you can't even read it. It is visual noise when you're trying to understand a 3D sort of space. And the other thing is, we tend to think of these as not problems because often we're looking at a small text with 5 or 10 things. You put in 500 things or 1,000 things, these are real problems, and less becomes more. And when you're doing the sort of the elicitation work, really you're working the abstract here. But the point is, if you know that, you know, so what do we have? We got some questions here. You know, this is about food. So you can use this abstract because what you're trying to do is you're trying to inquire about the knowledge there. So this is something that I think now I've found we can usefully write into the Sloan report because it's another interesting aspect to the work environment. And perhaps for somebody younger who's still studying might like to sort of do some experiments with this. But as I say, this is just something that's starting to focus, and I'm very happy for it to be wrong. So if you want to throw shoes, please do, because basically that is it. Yes.
I quite like that diagram. Perhaps we can
Yeah.
go back one slide.
No.
Yeah, this one. So, no, the other one.
Before
Take a second.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, this one. So I've been experimenting lately with this idea of removing knowledge from myself. It's a little bit aligned with what Ivan Illich called deschooling,
Yep.
but applied to knowledge rather than education and schooling. So basically, I found that there's in our culture such a strong push towards tools that help us understand more, right? There's this need more. So we have more, a lot of text. And then you say at some point it becomes noise. So we have to find a way to kind of fix that, I think, with better tools and software and so on. And I've started to actually experiment with trusting my brain to do the work for me. So in the Western culture, we don't really trust our brains. And the only way we have for explaining why the brain actually will retain only what it thinks it's important and that's valuable. The only way we have to explain that is like intuition, which I hate, is like some kind of woo word women have and so on. So I don't mean it in that sense at all. I just mean it that the moment you stop trusting your brain, you will be surprised at what you come up with. In other words, if the whole text becomes noise, let it. And then if some of the brain comes forward to you in some shape or form, follow that. In other words, I think we're trying to overmanage things.
I mean, the point is getting at here is that if you're getting overloaded by all the text, which you don't actually need to retain in your front of your mind in its literal sense, and you're looking at the relationships between the parts. This abstraction says, so I've probably spent far too much time doing spatial hypertext. Most of the time I'm saying to people, stop making it pretty and stop adding stuff in. Concentrate on what you're looking for, which eventually most people end up in things that are amazingly abstract, which is quite surprising, but because they're normally doing it just for themselves. So this is not normally a thing you share with hundreds of people. You tend to share this sort of stuff with hundreds of people, has to be said. But this is all happening in the same space. And the reason I was raising this is we were having these sort of seeming non-arguments, but quite strong arguments. And I was trying to pick apart why that was happening. And I think what was happening underneath was essentially these starting concepts of what you were doing were mashing because that wasn't being externalized by the speakers. I'm not sure if I explained that too well. Are there any other questions? Because otherwise we can probably gain some time back. Sounds like not. So, very good. We can roll on. We have
time for more questions.
Questions online.
Indication of sharing slides and things.
There more questions for Mark? Here we go.
Yeah, sorry, Fabien. Yeah, go on.
I can't help myself but think about looping it back that you start to manage the representation itself as one of those prime elements and start to play with those. Again, like the kind of grammar of graphic discussions.
Well, yes, indeed. It all gets quite abstract quite fast. And again, it's one of these things, if you're used to it, it seems absolutely simple. And if you're not used to it, it just seems even more abstract. So, but yes, absolutely, I think it's true.
I can add to what Mark is talking about here. This has been an absolute headache for us. So even though it may not be clear to you, for us, it really helps us understand the different ways we're looking at things. Because in this group, we have very, very different brains. And Laura, this is something you're an expert on. It's just like when you have people passionate, it's like a Venn diagram of a little bit of understanding. But also to go back a few slides.
Go back to but I think that if I take anything from,
sorry, let me just take care.
If I take anything through this challenge, if I take don't try and do both these at once at the same time. You can use the same information and sort of do them, but if you try and do both of them, there will be a certain pain point. Thank you.
You will be introduced by Dene.
So the Sloan Foundation grant allowed us to have to invite graduate students to come and present. And so last year we had Ryan House. This year we have Alexandra Martin. I'd like to read a little bit about her for you. She's a researcher at the 1P1 laboratory at the University of Quebec and Montreal, UQAM as we call it. She's curator of digital and web arts. Her dissertation, which she's writing right now and almost finished within days, to be defended in the winter of 26, is entitled Memory and Obsolescence, Encountering the Past in Digital Art. Her research focuses on the curation and preservation of obsolete and contemporary digital art, human and digital memory, ecosystems, internet pop culture. Previous exhibitions include Art Intelligent, Crisis, Transcreation, and others. I met you, I guess it's been about 5 years ago.
It was on my exhibitions.
Yeah, so she's done 2 exhibitions at the Next, and she's just written a shirt grant and exhibition. Yeah, 3 exhibitions at the Next, and then if she gets the shirt grant, she'll be with me in the lab next year, for about 6 months, I think. So anyway, welcome Alexandra Martin.
I think I'm listed as like finishing dissertation. I like to build suspense. But as Dene mentioned, I work at the 1P1 lab at UQAM, which is a relatively new lab. We're in the infrastructure of the NT2 lab, if you were familiar with that at all. And we are a extended reality lab, expérimentation en réalité étendue is what we call ourselves. And one of the things that I do there is I'm building a new database. So we've done databases before. Oh, there is a lag, isn't there? Yeah. So we've done databases before, and I'll talk just very briefly about that one, but we have a brand new one. So it's not online yet. It will be. It's going to be in Wikibase. It's going to be, I want to make it as accessible and open as possible. But right now we're really just working on like, what is the infrastructure? What are the taxonomies that we're going to be using? So there's two main things that I just want to mention as far as our methodology goes. Like first, we're working as documentation, not as analysis for the database. Yes, the analysis, it does happen, but it happens concurrently. And the point is to have this common resource because we're researchers in, well, I'm in arts and literature, but we've got people in didactics, we've got people in cognitive sciences, health. So the point is to have this base, this database of documentations that then works as really like a fieldwork semiotics that then everyone can go off and do their own thing. Our previous database, NT2, has over 4,000 entries in it already. It was started over 20 years ago. That's why it's called a hypermedia database. We don't use that word anymore, but we kept it. And so this one, that's what we're starting. We've got about 50. It's all closed right now. I've got it on like a closed form, but we will be hopefully within a year and a half, we'll be online. The second thing that's really important here is the taxonomical precision. Oh, and I guess what I should mention about the documentation versus analysis is that really for this database, we had to kind of step away from being researchers who want to always analyze. And we had to think about more, we're reporters, okay? So we're not going to make a recommendation on the appropriateness of content for a specific audience. We're not going to do that unless the publisher, the creator, or somebody who diffused an XR artwork or experience that's been included into our database has a recommendation, then we'll include it. But otherwise, we're just going to say things like people under the age of 14 probably shouldn't use headsets. But we won't be making any of those sort of, that sort of commentary within the database itself. And then the taxonomical precision, there's a whole bunch of categories of taxonomy that we're trying to document, and we're training our research assistants into documenting. But I wanted to just briefly mention three today: format, genre, and interactivity. And so format would be, what is the medium or the device via which we access this directly? And I'm sorry, I didn't have time to translate everything today, but just it seems like really, I thought it was really intuitive. And I'm really glad that we didn't just say, okay, this is going to be an easy category for our taxonomy. So if you'll notice, 2 and 3 are dome and projection. It's the same thing in French. And this was like, this is when I realized I wasn't in the youths of the lab, is this generational divide, because all of the, like our early researchers, they were like, no, but dome is projection. It's just the type of space. And we were like, no. Things are fluid. And they didn't get it. And like we had to show them that it is a cultural contest. It is specific to the dome space. It's not just a projection. Yeah, it involves projecting. But secondly, for genre, we have a bunch more now, and this is obviously going to be, we're going to keep adding more genres. We're not going to stop at just these, but we did also we have a very preliminary observation that between docufiction, documentary, and fictional documentary, which, fictional documentary, this is Spinal Tap, right? Docufiction is recreated events as they are true, and then documentary would be primary testimony, primary footage. But that in VR, especially when we're talking about like body swapping, there's actually a huge amount of blurring between those three categories. And so, within our documentation methodology, you can actually choose multiple genres, but these are just little observations we're making. As far as interactivity, this is our original, our first database, the hypermedia database, founded by NT2. And I think it's interesting to just take a look at the list right now. This is what's on the front end list on our site for the different modes of interactivity. Obviously, there's a lot more. And some of these are really like, you would wonder, like, why are they there? Like downloading, téléchargement, downloading, online purchase, involuntary participation. But the thing is, in nuancing all of these, we were able to really nuance our whole database. And so I'm kind of we're starting from scratch because there's no baseline vocabulary for this interactivity. So we talk a lot about control factors in XR, which is obviously going to be the main like physical form of interactivity. But I work with didacticians who are talking about multimodal interactivity as well. And so my presentation really today is an open invitation for discussion, for feedback as well, because this is what we're starting from. And I, in pulling together this list, was like, realize I'm not a translator because this wasn't French and I think it looks kind of messy in English. But the point is, so I mean, we're just looking for more nuance because there's not a set taxonomy yet that we've all agreed upon in any language at this point. There are conventions that are coming into place, but we're in a good position right now to insert ourselves into that discussion on those conventions. And I think that's my time, or I have a little bit more time. I rushed through everything. Yeah. Maybe we can have more time for questions. Yeah, because I really do want to hear more about. Yeah,
there's some things like billboarding, like we're talking about.
Yeah, we were
more of that.
Absolutely.
Also, when something is actually using the entire space as opposed to just in front of you, there's a lot of things to think about. And we were talking last night about Beat Saber.
Yes.
You know, the kind of experience you have where you're actually, you're not just, it's not like just tapping something. You're actually involved in a give and take. So low level interactivity, mid level, and then high level. So all of those also need to be thought about through here.
Well, and I think about, I like that you use those like the tiers, but I also wonder like what is low level, like what is full body? Because like we also have to think in terms of accessibility, like full body for one person is not necessarily full body for someone else, but and then you have so many like
skeuomorphic and
yes.
Skeuomorphic, or I prefer not skeuomorphic, but some people would rather have, you know, a beach around them, letting people know that there's no floor.
Yeah,
you know,
that's huge. Or that, you know, you might have shoes, but your avatar doesn't have anything else. You have shoes and hands. I prefer shoes. I prefer to have something of a body in VR space, but some people don't want that. Or for the experience, sometimes it's going to be better. It's going to be more conducive to what was originally intended. Yeah. It's good. It's finished, right? We don't have to add anymore.
So, in terms of taxonomy, you know, those are categorizations for a physical. And when you're in XR, theoretically, all those things blur. You can have things going into one mode into another and so on and so forth. There's nothing that limits you physically. You don't have to be sitting in a planetarium to watch the Pink Floyd laser show. So, how are you dealing with the fact that this becomes a lot more fluid?
Similarly to what we did here, which was, it's all there. It's all an option. It's all possible. And at times, if there's going to be something that, I'm drawing a blank on like an example here, but we are a lab. We sit around. There's 10 of us at a table, sometimes more, and we're arguing over whether or not that's an actual taxonomical distinction that should be integrated into the database. So we deal with it like that. As we move through documentations as well, like with the NT2 repertoire, things changed too. It evolved. The methodologies that were in place 20 years ago were not the methodologies that we were using up to 4 years ago when we closed the database as well. So it's I guess the answer is that we're dealing with that by allowing ourselves to evolve. But it's still important to have, like I said, a baseline vocabulary. Even maybe we're not going to fully agree upon it, but having that point of contention is also going to bring a conventional, you know, space where we can land on the same point, you know.
In terms of the vocabulary, you were also talking about French and English. Do you have other languages in the lab? Because, for instance, my brother and I, he's in the back middle there, say hi. We're Norwegian, so our language for knowledge is actually quite different. Like we talk to learn something, we say tilegne, which means something like to own the information. Very different. Do you feel that in the translation you are increasing the vocabulary for the nuances?
Absolutely. One of the things that we have a lot of public funding from the province and from the federal government. And one of the major things that they always want in our reports is not only that we're producing academic materials and whatnot, but that we're doing what they call the bilan de vulgarisation. So like vulgarization for the general public, where we create resources for teachers. Actually, there's a lot of people who are in art education and language education in our lab as well. And so we are a Francophone province. Yes, there's a lot of Anglophones, but we are not depending only on English. And so sometimes we're creating a work in French. Sometimes we're approximating something. And that's what happened too with the NT2 repository.
Have you tried to access completely different non-European languages to just see how they talk about it? Might be an interesting dialogue. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a really good idea. I don't have a set currently to do that. Yeah.
When I see full body or partial body engagement, for example, I don't know if you studied this in the lab, but I think a lot of like the crowd that tends to push in actually most of those is, and we're all adults here, maybe not too Puritan, but let's say everything related to online sexuality. There is so much stuff, it's honestly mind-blowing. And people who buy, let's say, open hardware full body tracking, it's mostly to have dragon sex.
Yeah.
And honestly, okay, it's not personally my thing, but I think it's beautiful because they do their thing. Doing this, they're pushing the boundaries. Like most of us, we have like our self-avatar in there, which is boring. Yeah, it's boring. But they don't do that. And they really push in terms of software, hardware, practices, everything. Yeah, I would probably, I think it's worth inquiring it.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, I just think of like the parallel, like, 20 years ago, we were working a lot on voyeurism, Adam's Cam, as an artwork on the web as well. So like, and how are we inserting ourselves sometimes into, well, very intimate, non-public spheres as well, because it's absolutely of interest. And we have researchers who are actually in sexology as well, who want to come work with us. So we'll probably get more documentations on that from them. Yeah.
As well. I have questions. Among librarians, I think there are discussion, of course, about the rise of AI applying to their work. And one of the areas has really been databases being transformed into knowledge bases, whereby instead of relying on keywords to classify particular texts in various ways, you can actually get the artificial intelligence to read the texts and reclassify them based on knowledge. And we have examples of texts, for example, from the UN, and this part here doesn't say the word food security, but deals with it. Therefore, it gets classified and curated in that way. Are you in organizing this kind of thing? Because you mentioned databases more than once. Are you also looking into this area of how to use that to deal with the taxonomy overlaps and allow you to reclassify them and create the information based on the content, not just on the keywords?
It's on our radar, but no, not currently. I think no, but no, because I do think it's like step 3. Like I want to get this like online and then have more of this and more of other people documenting as well. Because right now our data set is like 80 documentations. It's really small. And I want to get us to like 250 before I have something online. And then I want to get us to 500 before, we start then implementing another technology. And so I also have to have human resources and at this time we don't, but yeah. Yes.
To what extent is this for XR, and what extent are you actually thinking about VR? So for example, I'm thinking probably the biggest XR application in the world is probably GPS navigation in a car. Perhaps a mixed reality application. That doesn't seem to capture here the things like the routing, navigational kind of choices, responses to choices about. Is that in scope here, or are you more thinking about?
Perhaps this is where we diverge in French, but XR would be like our umbrella, and it would include any of that. We have one researcher currently who works on cartography, but she works on VR cartography. So navigation is definitely a question, but like, yeah, I'm thank you for bringing that up because I do, yeah, I agree with you. We should add navigational interactions. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's probably because at this point with our small data set, we haven't yet encountered it, you know? Because we do a lot of like galleries and art exhibitions, and that's a lot of our space right now. And as our team is going to grow and we have more people in different fields too, we'll probably encounter different modalities.
Just real quick, I was just thinking about, you should look at like the 18th and 19th century naturalists as they were inventing their taxonomies, because they were on a blank canvas in many cases, and who are also embarking on a blank canvas. And fortunately, we have linguistic and ontological baggage the last 150, 200 years that is, it's going to be a struggle for anybody trying to navigate a completely new environment.
Why fish don't exist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.